Hello and welcome back to another Wild Wisdom Wellbeing guest slot. And today I'm delighted to have somebody, as we were just saying before we went live, that we haven't seen each other in quite some time. We met when I was first networking back in Bristol when I lived there before moving to Wales. So I'm delighted to introduce Lauren Chiren of Women of a Certain Stage. And as you may either have seen in my post or gather from the title of Lauren's business, we're going to be talking today about menopause. And as I said in that post as well, it's not just for women. Men are affected by menopause too, not necessarily the male menopause, but I'm talking about how partners, business partners, managers, staff, colleagues, friends, family, all are impacted, because anybody who's going through any experience, it's the people around them as well who are impacted and who want to know how best to support. Because as I was talking with somebody else about postnatal depression, for the fact that May has been Maternal Mental Health Month, it's not just the person themselves. People around want to know, what should I say? What shouldn't I say? What should I do? How can I best support? So hopefully we'll be touching on a lot of that today. So Lauren, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and about maybe your story and how you came to set up Women of a Certain Stage?
Yeah, of course. I think my story, I'm not going to give you War and Peace, but my story, started really when I was 16. I went to university to do double maths and computing, and I came out with a psychology degree. And that was really the blueprint for how the rest of my life seems to have gone. And I had no idea at the time why I was doing a topic like that, because it wasn't representative of what I had done well at school or anything I'd really shown any interest in, but it was just one of those random experiences. I worked in the corporate environment, doing 12 years in global operation roles. And then I retrained as a sports therapist, nutritional advisor, and personal trainer. Now that came about because when I was 21, when I was in my ops roles, I was also doing a lot of judo, and we were, night before a big competition, waiting for team selection. And the next day I woke up and I was unable to move from my neck down. So I literally spent 6 months lying on my back staring at the ceiling. It took 4 years to get back on my feet. I never missed a day from work. I found a way to work around it, but it was tough. And it got me to thinking about the connection between our mind and our body, and the, nature and our environment, everything. And so for 30 years, I've been studying neuroscience, and I've been studying all things relating to how we perform as individuals, how we think, how we behave, how we can or cannot control our thoughts and our feelings. So 12 years global ops, retrained as a personal trainer, sports therapist, nutritional advisor, worked with people like Dustin Hoffman, Anastasia, was in Australia with the England team when we won the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup. And then a variety of life experiences came along. I was with a long-term friend who became my partner. We're due to get engaged. I was pregnant, and unfortunately at 6 months I was offered a termination and my partner left. So the baby was not intended to make full term, and was also, if he did make term, that the chances were he wouldn't have any quality of life and probably wouldn't survive. So it was again one of those situations where it's like, what do you do? And I was like, okay, well, you can kind of put your fingers in your ears and pretend nothing's happening, right? And just carry on. And, there was I massaging people and training people in the rowing machine and weights, doing all the contraindicated things you shouldn't do when you're pregnant. And I just carried on. He arrived early and he was critically ill. He was in NICU and he has got lifelong medical needs. My son will be 16 in September at the time of recording this. And he is a front row rugby playing, top set of everything at school. Young man, and he is, how I landed so lucky to have him as a son, I've got no idea. But it was one of those other times in life where it was a real transitional moment. So back into corporate space, worked my way up from project manager to program director in financial services. I led on global change projects and programs and had my slice of £250 million worth of change processes, people and systems. So I had teams in India, America, the UK. I loved what I did. I love the complexity, the intellectual stimulation of taking really complex regulations and legislation, breaking it down to bite-sized pieces ready for people to deliver. So I built teams up, had really good success with what I was doing. I'd been headhunted from one company to the next. And then I found myself sitting in meetings where I couldn't get words out of my mouth. In fact, my throat would be so tight that I would have to take in little cups of hot water to help me relax my throat enough to be able to squeak a few words out. In a planning meeting, I couldn't get the word plan out of my head. I could describe what planning meant, but I couldn't actually get the word out of my mouth. One day I came home from work. I drove from Swindon back to Bristol, came home, said hi to everyone, turned around, apparently picked up my bags and went out to go to work. And everyone's like, where are you going? I'm like, going to work. We just come back from work. Anyway, without going into too much detail, a number of things were going on. My joints were hurting. I wasn't sleeping. My recall, my retention were awful. My skin was dry and itchy. I was bloated. I was getting injured. I mean, I was super fit. I trained hard. I played hard and I worked hard. And, you know, my background's in health and well-being. If anyone knows how to fuel themselves and recover, it's me. But I was getting these injuries, things that had never happened to me before. Anyway, very long story short, I left my job in my early 40s thinking I had early onset dementia. And it was about 3 months later when my doctor turned around and said to me, to be sure, Lauren, you've just been through the menopause.
Was he from Ireland?
He was from Ireland. And I was the happiest menopausal woman in Bristol.
Yeah. It's not dementia.
Exactly that. So it was fascinating because I was thinking, well, you know, I'm pretty capable and I've got loads of skills, knowledge, and experience. And I mistook this thinking it was dementia. So was I the only one? And that was the beginning of, you know, Women of a Certain Stage 8 years ago.
So that was quite early as well, at the age of 40.
It looks like I went through menopause about 37,
Wow.
because it looks like I had my son and went straight into menopause. So we'll never really know because I fed him for a year and then I was on contraception that meant I didn't have a bleed. But I never had another period after I had my son. So the chances are I went straight into menopause. 40 is not uncommon. Early 40s is not uncommon. There's 1 in 100 women go through menopause under 40. Between 40 and, sorry, 1 in 100 women go through menopause between 40 and 45, 1 in 1,000 under 40.
But that's good to know as well, because I'm sure there are a lot of women out there who, if they are even maybe recognizing this is what's happening, my body is changing, whatever, but to think, oh, I am under 45, maybe I'm certainly in the minority, if not alone in the people
No.
in my circle, it must feel quite isolating.
So the average age of menopause is 45 to 55. But perimenopause starts several years before then. So you're likely to be experiencing symptoms in your late 30s, early 40s. If you're going to go through a natural normal menopause at 45, 46, you will be in perimenopause for the few years leading up to that. So your symptoms are likely to start in your early 40s, if not your late 30s. That's completely normal. And that's a big thing that I think we don't know. No one told us about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, nobody talks about it, do we? Which is why I wanted you to come on, because I know that you talk very eloquently about all of this. You have a lot of experience of sharing and working with. You have a lot of knowledge, personal experience. So what sort of things do people tend to ask you or come to you about?
Well, the majority of my work is really working with organizations to help employers to become menopause savvy and to help them to learn how to support their staff. So the kind of key things are menopause awareness sessions. I run free sessions in the public domain that people can come to, and they're unlimited. You can come as many times as you want, and as many people as you want to sign up are welcome to come to that. But the thing is about having that education, explaining the facts and figures, the ages, stages, definitions, symptoms of menopause, so that people have got that good baseline knowledge. Because at the moment, there are so many myths out there. People just don't know the facts. And interestingly, over 86% of women neither know what menopause is, nor how it's going to impact them. So if we don't know what it is, like I didn't, how do you know how to ask for the right help and support? How do you know how to make the right lifestyle choices and decisions, or to have the right conversation with your partner, your doctor, or your employer? So awareness, education is the number one thing. Getting line managers trained and making sure that you're then providing the right support for women. So in the workplace, that's obviously going to look like HR, occupational health, employee assistance programs, mental health first aiders, menopause champions, all being appropriately trained. But for ourselves, what's important is that we understand what estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are actually doing in our bodies and the roles and the functions that they play. So we all, we go through about 37 years of having this kind of ebb and flow of hormones that we're used to and we learn to roll with, whether it's a good or bad experience. And so when we're in our menstruation years, we kind of get to know when we want to withdraw and don't want to be around people, or we're really gregarious and out there, or really analytical, or super social, or a bit more reflective. We kind of learn to work with that, most of us. And then menopause comes along, and estrogen, progesterone, testosterone are completely out of whack for most people. So that's when those kind of indicators of where you are in your cycle go out the window. And it becomes more of a challenge, although it's completely doable. It's more of a challenge to figure out how best to look after yourself. I always say suffering's optional, and I always say that menopause is a badge of honor, because I believe that we should be really grateful that we get to live this long, and that we're going to live for another 30 or 40 years afterwards.
And in a productive way. We still have that potential, which we wouldn't have had back in the day of Neanderthal or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what we, that positioning of menopause, we go through on average 37 years of monthly cycles, and then we go through on average 37 years after that. So if we just take a moment, take a breath, and think about all the achievements you've made when you've had to deal with monthly cycles as well. Think about the relationship makeups and breakups, the house moves, the challenges, the deaths, the injuries, all the other things that have happened.
Babies, raising children.
Exactly that. All of those things you've achieved while you've been going through monthly cycles, with those hormones, pesky hormones, doing all their incredible things, right? Can you imagine what on earth we're going to be able to do when we don't have to deal with that anymore? We're going to fly, right? So this second act, third act, whatever you want to call it, but the postmenopausal period of our life, I just think is so super exciting. And I love just watching people when they switch their attitude and mindset around. But yeah, no, to answer your original question, lifestyle choices and, knowing what your hormones are doing and understanding how to work with them is fundamental to a good experience through menopause.
And like you say, that the mindset, how we look at these things, our perspective, because that we can choose. It might be not so easy at the beginning because we're not used to that, and it's not the society's view in which we live and are so conditioned, but that it can be the age of the crone, as people are talking about now, this great age of potential and wisdom and experience. But if we could just go back again to talk about symptoms, because we kind of know about the hot sweats, the hot flashes, whatever, depending on where you live in the world, whatever we call those, and maybe weight gain as well, which is not necessarily menopause. It doesn't have to be that. We don't have to experience these things, but those are the things that we're more familiar with. What are some of the other symptoms? Because you were thinking, I have early onset dementia. You weren't thinking, oh, I've got a bit of a hot flush going on. It must be the menopause or the perimenopause. So what are some of the other symptoms that women or even the men in their lives could be looking out for?
So I didn't have hot flushes, but I didn't sleep. I didn't sleep because I was having horrendous night sweats, which at the time I didn't know whether they were being caused because I was overtraining, overworking, burning the candle at both ends, not eating and drinking the way I should. And I had 18 months of not sleeping properly. So I probably slept a maximum of 2 hours in any one night in 18 months, and held down a full-time job, looked after a sick child, and trained every day.
It's not a wonder that your mental faculties weren't at their peak. I'm currently reading a book. It's an amazing book. It's been sat on my shelves, and you kind of think, why did I not read this years ago? But things come at the time that they're meant to. And it's called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Have you read it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. I think it's a book that everybody should read, I say, after having it sat on my shelves for ages.
Yeah.
But it's such a great book for understanding what sleep actually does for us. It's not just an optional extra, and the impacts then of not having sleep, not just on your mental faculties, but on our overall physical
Everything.
being as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
everything.
And you know, sleep is complex, right?
Yes.
It's very complex. And one of the reasons I wear an Oura ring now instead of an Apple Watch or any other, you know, tech thing wearable, is because this gives me really good sleep stats. And for my clients, I have no financial gain by talking about this, by the way, just to be clear. But the sleep metrics that you get from this are really, really good. And also, what it does is tell you the next day, based on your sleep and your previous profile, how rested you are and how ready you are to be able to tackle the next day. So it might say you slept this amount, but because of the last week or day or whatever, you can only push yourself 50% or 80%. So even if you've got a really tough training day ahead or a really busy schedule, it gives you a kind of heads up of whether you can go full on and play full out, or whether you need to just be thinking about being a bit more restful and digestible with yourself. And I think that's really powerful. And if someone's still having periods, then they've got, you can track that as well. So really, really, really fascinating. I love all these types of things. But yeah, sleeps. I didn't sleep. If when I did fall asleep, I would scratch the life out of my skin, to the point where my team members had a box of scarves in their desk. So when I went into work, they'd look at what color of suit I had on and they'd give me the matching color of scarf, so I didn't look like I'd been mauled by a cat. My eyes were dry and itchy. My joints, like my finger joint, my thumb joints, just got to the point where I could barely use anything. I was doing a lot of deadlifting. I was training for a marathon, and I'm not a long distance runner, but I was training for a marathon, stubborn big toe at Taekwondo, couldn't do any running. So I was on the hand bike. I was doing a lot of lifting to try and get fit. I was on the walk bike, doing a lot of deadlifting. And I got to the point where I had lateral and medial epicondylitis in both elbows at the same time. So I couldn't lift a plate out of the dishwasher. And it took 3 months before I could hold a pen and write. So it took me a year before I could lift again. Well, I still am building that back up. But my body just wasn't recognizable. And I was eating well. In all other ways, I felt like I was looking after myself. Turns out, for menopause, I was overtraining. I was doing the wrong type of exercise. I was eating the wrong type of foods. I didn't have enough protein in my diet. Clearly wasn't getting enough sleep. So symptoms, when you're not sleeping and you can't quite focus the next day, and this builds up over time, your focus, your recall, your retention is shot. Then you start to worry about making mistakes. If you're worrying about making mistakes or not getting through your workload, you end up in procrastination and overwhelm. Then you start to doubt yourself. Your self-esteem, your self-confidence takes a knock. When all of that's going on consistently, it's doing a great job building up and building up and building up. You really do start to doubt yourself and your ability to perform. Then you start withdrawing and not interacting. So you get stuck in your own head. So then your mental health takes a nosedive, because you start believing what's going on in your head because you've got nobody challenging you. And then before you know it, not me, luckily I left my work, but I end up getting people coming to me and saying, I've been for brain scan, I've been for an ECG, I've been for a gynae, check. I've had all these scans, I've had MRIs, and I'm like, what? Sort your diet out, get some sleep, get hydrated, and we'll get you back on track. And usually I take people into plant-based diet, for a while, just to allow their bodies to settle down. And then we reintroduce so they can learn for themselves what works for them, because everyone's different. There is no one size fits all.
No.
I don't believe in diet. Yeah, exactly. I don't believe in diet sheets, or, despite being a nutritional advisor and former personal trainer, I don't believe in going, there's your exercise regime, there's your menu plan. Now, teach people how to tap into their own physiology. Help them understand what energizes them, what relaxes them, what winds them up, what their triggers are. Help them to really, really, really get back to who they are, because most of us have lost it along the way. And,
Absolutely.
I know you're an expert in that space, so your clients are in really good hands.
But that's so much the thing, isn't it? That we have given away so much of our knowledge of ourselves and our trust and our intuition, really. And I haven't quite got to the end of Clarissa Pinkola Estes' Women Who Run with the Wolves. and how
Okay.
women are conditioned, even from we are no height at all, no age at all, to be good little girls and to hold our stuff inside. And even I watched a series a few years ago now, pre-lockdown, where they did an exploration of kids at the age of 7 and 8. And they looked at the clothes and they looked at the way the teachers interacted with them and the names that, Love or Buster or whatever, and how stereotypical, even though the parents didn't think they were, the teachers didn't think they were. But when it was all played back, and then you look at the clothes and there's My Little Princess and it's all frills and lace, and then it's Batman or whatever for the boys and all primary colors. So from that beginning, we are taught and conditioned so much. So it's kind of not a wonder, really. And I think
Yeah, and
it's unpacking all of that and understanding the impact that that has had on our beliefs and the way that we look at things and why we talk about things or don't.
yeah, and I think what happens is when you hit puberty into your 20s, you learn to control and to mask.
Hmm.
And so you sail, you work your way through your 20s and 30s, and you've learned to put that mask on every day to face society or work or whatever. And then all of a sudden, that hormonal disruption suddenly goes bing, bing, bing. And all of a sudden, this mask keeps trying to bounce off. And then all the things you never resolved and actually
Yeah.
fundamentally don't believe in suddenly start popping up. So suddenly you find yourself bursting into tears at the drop of a hat or wanting to knock someone out because you're in a fit of rage, and
Yeah.
all of those things are really normal in menopause. So that getting back to yourself and trusting your intuition, learning how to listen to your gut is just so important.
And the fact that often it's been dismissed as, oh, it's just her hormones. It
Yeah.
it even takes away on a level as well your own belief in yourself. And you feel I would feel so dismissed to hear that.
I think I have the benefit of hindsight, and I have the benefit of working in this space for 8 years, and now I can firmly listen to people making comments like that and go, thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for signaling to me where you're at in your understanding. Thank you for acknowledging that there's a gap here and an opportunity for education, and just turn it into positive.
Yeah.
Because, all it is saying is that they have grown up with a belief system, that they're in a culture and environment. They've never had their questioning challenged. And why would they think differently? So thank you
Yeah.
for giving me an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of attack back, if you feel attacked or threatened by that sort of comment, to attack back just makes people dig their heels in and feel that they have to justify what they've said. So it ends up just escalating. But to go back and say thank you, it's like, oh, okay.
And
It's
equally,
just dynamic.
I remember, yeah, and I remember someone at work saying to me, it's been noticed you've been walking around this place as if you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's not becoming of a senior leader in this organization. Something for you to think about tonight. Or the day that he said, I think you were happier when you're doing that personal training thing of yours you used to do. And I was mortified because I felt that that was a slight on me. I felt like that meant that I wasn't up to par. It was nothing to do with that.
No.
It was his perception, his reality. But being the good little girl, like you said, I went, oh, I'm going to take that perception. I'm going to wear that reality. I'm going to make it my thing. Whereas now I'd go, thank you for pointing out what you've observed. What can we do with that?
Yeah. Rather than feeling still the little child or the woman in the old fashioned, I was talking about this at a networking meeting with some friends this morning about how we have still a degree of the gender stereotypical roles, which has come from that whole upbringing that we were just talking about. But that, in the boardroom, it's all men in suits in our minds at some level, quite often still. Even if we don't believe it, there's still an element of that belief in there somewhere. So when the guy comes up to you and says those sorts of things, we think, oh, because we always tend to think I have to prove myself even more in this male dominated, as so often corporate is. this male-dominated environment, I have to prove that despite the fact that I'm a woman. And so then we get characters like you see in the movies, Glenn Close or Margaret Thatcher, who feel that if they want to break that glass ceiling and move into those levels, they have to become like a man rather than actually the feminine energy has so much to offer here.
Look at Lucinda Ardern. Look at the New Zealand Prime Minister, taking her baby into Parliament and, having a baby while she's Prime Minister. Whether you like her politics or not, I guess is another story. But, just think of some of the female PMs that there are that have led their countries through the pandemic and how they've come out of it compared to some of the other countries with male leaders. It's phenomenal. And it's really interesting just watching her when she's talking. I mean, I don't know if I'm going into a topic that's kind of outside of our scope for today, but I just think that power and that energy is, it's interesting when you watch different people, how they exude and use their femininity.
And that idea of looking for positive female role models has been a big one for me, because I felt very much that I was in a male-dominated world as I was growing up, and I didn't. They were kind of the big people in my life. The women were behind the scenes. They might have been big in their own way, but not out there doing things, making change. And so I've now consciously looked for people, whether they're writers or people who speak or whatever, who are strong female, to see, that's how it is to be a strong female, because I didn't know. How do you be a strong, assertive, not aggressive female? So it is an interesting one.
So that's an interesting conversation, assertive and aggressive. Women get called aggressive when they're being assertive. So that's that's a perception reality shift as well, isn't it? And,
how we use words and semantics.
Yeah. And, in the workplace, I am highly directive. I am, super pace setting. And I drive my, I'm not in that environment anymore, but, I drive my team really hard. I get the very best out of them. But I'm also very coaching. I also make time for my people. And, in the corporate space, I was the leader that never had anyone off and sick. I didn't have any turnover because people stayed with me, because I pushed them just slightly beyond what they thought they could do, to a point where they could stretch and grow and learn and become something even more. And I think that that's one of the core differences between the female leaders I've worked with and the male leaders I've worked with, is that the male leaders are highly directive and highly pace setting, and there's no coaching. It's just drive.
Very yang and none of the yin.
Yeah.
So to get back to menopause, what are some of the other symptoms? We sort of started that conversation, as well as the night sweats and the hot flushes and maybe putting on a bit of weight. You were talking about you were training too hard and doing the wrong kind of training, which can actually lead to weight gain, certainly for women of that age around the middle, because we have too much stress.
Yeah, so your cortisol starts
exactly.
havoc. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's going back to what I was saying about the lack of sleep, lack of self-confidence, lack of self-esteem, low mood, depression, anxiety, itchy, dry skin. Estrogen is a big player in your mucous membranes. So, dry and itchy eyes, nose, ears, vagina, all of those things are highly and easily fixable. And looking at, everything that arises as a result of all of those things. But, get urinary incontinence, bladder problems, bloating, headaches, hormonal migraines tend to get worse. And what else? I'm just thinking through the lists. I mean, there's a good, depending what research you read now, people say there's 30 to 40 or 60 to 70 different symptoms. So the problem is that you get to this point in life, if you go through a normal menopause and you haven't had surgical or medical menopause, then you've probably got elderly relatives you're involved in caring for, children or empty nesters, one side of the fence of that or the other. you're probably working nowadays, and you may be in a relationship, or you may be part-time parent to children that you're splitting with an ex, and then potentially with or not with a new partner. And, we're doing all the jobs our mothers did. We're doing all the work our fathers did, but we haven't relinquished anything. So what's gone is our self-care, our community, our girlfriends, that support and that network around us. And most of us are so conditioned, as you said, to just getting up and getting on. We don't even realize we've lost it until we get sick, mentally or physically, or emotionally. And, I think it's that build up. So it's very difficult to disseminate whether it's adrenal fatigue, or whether it's stress, or whether it's menopause. And actually they're all interlinked, because the route to getting well and being better and having, being able to successfully navigate menopause is the same. It's looking after yourself. It's good morning and evening routines. It's hydration. It's movement. It's eating well, decluttering your life of all that doesn't serve you, listening to your gut. It's the same thing time and time again that we've forgotten to do. And it's hard, it's hard to find a balance, find a flow.
And we're not taught how to do these things. We're not taught to listen to our gut or to our bodies. And when you get to, you've had your 37 years of menstruation and your years before that, so you're in your 40s, 50s, and you're at least I had this sort of subconscious thing going on that you get to 30 and you've got your life sorted. No, I'll get to 40 and my life will be sorted. Okay, it must be 50 then. And you get to 50 and you think, I'm at least halfway. And I'm still maybe not feeling that my life is sorted. And as you were saying about maybe you've got empty nest syndrome, or your whole relationship situation is, as they say on Facebook, it's complicated, or it's all in transition, or you've got blended families that are a whole other kettle of fish, and possibly your own parents are getting older and you're facing their mortality, which is a real challenge. And how that then reflects on you. And no matter what age your parents are no longer here, you still feel an orphan. So, and you then become, I'm the top level of my family now. So all of these challenges going on, and we're not taught how to take care of ourselves in that. Because we don't have, like in the hunter-gatherer traditions, they have like the red tent idea, they have the sisterhoods, they have the women coming together, they have the hunters going out to hunt. And so they're there together through all of the feminine stuff. But we don't have that for a lot of it, even childbirth, particularly through coronavirus and lockdown and all of that stuff. So where do we learn this stuff? Who's out there saying, no, you must, for your own well-being, for your own health, you need to take care of yourself, and this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And the information that's out there is quite often conflicting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, I was one of my friends in the States who's also a coach. She's phenomenal. She's super successful. She's had 4 different businesses. She sold them all very successfully. And she's got 2 children. She's going through a really challenging divorce at the moment. And she called yesterday just to check in and just ask me a few questions. And she's signed up with this functional doctor, and she's now questioning the doctor. She's also health and wellbeing professional, and she's had her own gym. She's competed internationally at different sports. So she knows a lot about this space, and she's signed up with this functional medic to go through a program because she's experiencing weight gain and stress and struggling with the divorce and everything that's going on. So she's like, yeah, but I've got to eat 5,000 calories for 2 days before we start the program. And she sat down and worked out all the supplements and all the different things I had to buy, and I've done it. But 5,000 calories, and I'm going to put on weight, and I'm trying to lose weight. And I was like, whoa, stop. Your cortisol levels are through the roof. Your business is on hold. Your children don't know what's going on. You don't know where you're going to end up living. Your soon-to-be ex is in 1 minute, out the next minute, and pretending it's not happening. Is it any wonder that you're not losing weight at the moment? It's just your body. It will come together. It will happen. But the upshot of that conversation was actually, if you've met this functional medic and you trust her and you believe in her, then follow her process. Because whether you work with this functional medic, or she works with me, or she comes and works with you, I know that what you do with your clients works. I know that what I do with my clients works. I know that what this functional doctor does will work. It's about finding that one individual that you connect with, that you trust in, that you believe in, and trusting them enough to follow their process. Because when clients follow the process works. Because every single one of us has got a different personality. We work in different ways. We attract different people. And we use our own unique process that we've tried and tested, and we've proven that it works. And I think, what do you do to learn this? You find a role model. You find someone that you trust, that you can follow their plan, follow them in whatever way that you feel fit and suitable for you, and trust their process and do the work. But just find the right person.
Find one that you can relax into as well. Like when you're saying about your friend there, if you're questioning them and trying to second guess and worried about, if I eat all of these calories, I'm going to put weight on, you probably will, and you won't get very far, because you're not, it's that commitment thing, isn't it?
100%.
Unless you're right, this is what I'm doing, even if I'm only doing it for now, because we can always change our minds.
Yeah.
We're not tied in for life, which I think a lot of us seem to live from that perspective. Even if we know it's not true, we still sort of think, well, if I do this now, then I'm going to balloon and that'll be it. Yeah. I'll be a size whatever for life. So what things can maybe we eat, or how do we make sure we're drinking the right amount, or what other ways can we support ourselves and support the other people in our lives, maybe if they're the ones who are experiencing menopause? What can we do?
Yeah, so I mean, when I don't work with many women now, because most of the work I'm doing is done through my team. But the core things that I do teach in the menopause plan, which is, the core program that we run, is looking at getting your mindset sorted out. First of all, mindset and hydration are the first things that we work on. So learning about your thoughts, learning about whether they're real or not, learning how to challenge your thoughts and work with your thoughts so that you can, think about the circumstances you find yourself in. Be conscious of the thoughts you're having about those circumstances. Then feel into your body. What feelings are you having about those thoughts and those circumstances? Because that's going to lead to you taking certain action. And you can choose what that action is. You can also choose your thoughts and feelings, but we'll park that for just now. Be choosing your actions, because those actions will then predict the results you're going to get. So if you're going through a cycle of feeling as if you're caught in certain circumstances that are going to give you certain results, actually, either you need to be looking at your thoughts or your feelings or the actions you're taking, because you can change the results. So I work closely with people on that cycle, first of all, and teach them how to use that as a thought model to change how they're thinking and to embrace menopause. Then we'll look at hydration. And I'm not a big fan of dictating that anyone should eat any diet or any training plan or any amount of water or any of that. But what I say to people is check the color of your urine. And pending you having beetroot in your diet or certain supplements or, certain medications, if you're running clear or pale yellow most of the time after your first morning wee, then you're fine. But if you're darker or a different color, and you don't ingest anything that's changing the color of your urine, then you want to be upping your liquid intake. Preferably not alcohol, caffeine, or tannin-based drinks. Definitely not sugary drinks, and definitely not bubbly drinks. So you need to just find out for yourself, because it's going to be different. This time of year is going to be more because we're warmer, and we're likely to be moving more. If you're in an air-conditioned environment, you're going to need more water as well. So that's the water, the mindset. When you've got them in place, then I work on self-care. So what does self-care mean? It's not bubble bath and Prosecco. It's listening to yourself and understanding what you need. And that is a massive conversation about, it could be so many different things. And then from a nutritional point of view, again, I've got clients that can quite happily munch away on crackers and cheese and feel really super energized. And I have other clients who will feel really heavy and can't think straight and get brain fog from eating stuff like that. So we go plant-based for a week, and plant-based, no caffeine, no tannin, no processed foods, no added sugars. Plant-based for a week, you can have chicken, you can have white fish. But what that does is it just allows your body to settle down, and it gives you an opportunity to feel what it's like to sleep better, to be more energized, to have a more even mood. Then we go and introduce a food. So it might be dairy. So introduce a food and notice how we're feeling 20 minutes, 2 hours, and 24 hours later. Go plant-based again. Then we introduce another food. Notice 20 minutes, 2 hours, and we keep doing that process until we've reintroduced everything. And that just gives people the lived experience of finding out what those foods are doing.
And also the practice of listening to your body.
Yeah. Yeah.
And noticing the difference of how you feel, whether that's a physical or the brain fog.
Yeah. And that for me is the most powerful way. You know, you can go and spend a fortune with nutritional advisor, with dietitians or nutritionists or all sorts of other professionals. And that's fine if that's what you need, not knocking that at all. But if you want to be doing this at home on your own and just getting curious, then that is the simplest way to find out what foods are working well for you and what foods are not. And the movement, you've got to be doing strength exercise. You don't have to go to the gym. I am not the gym Bobby telling you that you've got to be in the gym, but you've got to be doing strength exercise. We lose muscle mass as we get older, and we have to be challenging our muscles if we want to stay upright, and we want to stay strong, and we want to lead those happy, healthy lives in the future.
And so for me, that also relates to our self-belief.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have a good self-belief, we're going to be doing this anyway.
Yeah.
So how much of the dowager's hump is to do with the woman and her perspective on who she is now versus my diet versus movement? So there's all of these factors going on.
Yeah. I think that's a really good question, and bearing in mind that once your hormone levels decline, your bone density is going to decline anyway, and that's another reason for doing strength work, to boost your bone density, and then doing impact work so that you're doing a lot of walking or skipping, jumping if your bladder allows. And if it doesn't, you should be getting that fixed, because you don't need to suffer with that is fixable. But I hear what you're saying about the posture police, and I agree with that. But there is also that physiological, if your estrogen, progesterone, testosterones are a lot lower, and they're not doing the basic bone building job that they're meant to do, that's going to exacerbate it. But again, it comes right full circle, right? If you're looking after yourself, you're listening to yourself, you do the right things, and therefore, you can maintain that posture.
Absolutely. So did you have any last words of wisdom that you could share, maybe from the perspective of the work that you mostly do, of supporting menopause awareness and supporting businesses to support their staff, or families as well? It's the same sort of situation. How do you support the woman maybe in your family who is going through a lot of this change and really maybe not knowing where they are just at the moment, because it is always in change and in flux? How can we best offer support for people who are going through menopause?
Talk. As in, allow them to talk. You be quiet and listen. Bear in mind, women do not want to be fixed. We want to be listened and supported. And what we might want from you in the morning could be different from what we want in the evening. So be prepared for that. But this is a time when you have to really love the people that are around you. You need to really love on the person that's going through menopause, because they are putting together something they weren't prepared for or educated about. They're trying to learn to work with these new hormonal shifts and changes. So you need to support them and not think, wow, I've supported you for 6 months, it's your turn to support me now. And not to go in and go, you having a moment again? Your menopausal love. It's really important that the reason we've got 2 of these, how many times have we been told? We've got 2 of these. Listen, and do a little bit more listening, and just ask, what can I do when you're feeling this way? And check in regularly. Go out for a walk without your mobiles and be somewhere in nature where you can have a conversation and not have any distractions. Have a conversation in the car when you're on a decent car journey where they can't disappear. Be there. Be present, be prepared for your, be aware that if suddenly your partner is not showing any interest in being intimate, that actually their body might be going through changes, which mean that they don't feel like it and they physically can't. But again, that's one of the easiest things. The physical feeling is one of the easiest things to fix in menopause, with localized estrogen. So just be there, listen, support, and be conscious of things like, caffeine, spicy foods, red meat, alcohol. All of these things are not a girl's best friend when she's going through menopause. They're toxins for the body. They're not good for us at any time, but they're especially not good when we're having big hormonal shifts and changes. So I think it's just listening, being supportive, appreciating that this too will pass. You've invested a lot of time, effort, and energy in this relationship. So whether it's a work one or a personal one or a social one, actually the core person still has all the love, the skills, knowledge, and experience that they've always had. They're just going through a physical transition in the same way as your teenagers are going through. And it's just the other end of the spectrum.
And I think what you were saying about that things change, it's remembering that although maybe the person supporting the menopausal woman is struggling to navigate, so is she. Mm-hmm. So she can't give you a roadmap because she doesn't have one. She's finding it as she goes along. So to maybe being able at times when things are not maybe so stressed and pressured, to acknowledge that you're both doing this together. And if you can bring in the humor that, hey, we're just trying this again and we're working this out together, and holding a space for that person where they feel safe. And then when we don't feel so pressured, because when we do feel pressured and we feel threatened in some way, that we lash out. So if both parties can give themselves a bit of slack and just, okay, this is new, we're learning it together.
Yeah.
I think that's a great message. Yeah. Lovely. Thank you. So thank you so much, Lauren, for all of your time today, for all of your wisdom. And I'll share your socials below in this post, and also when I turn this into a YouTube and into a podcast, they'll be there as well. And if you would send me the details about the ring that you wear, and we can add that as well for anybody who wants to track their sleep.
Sure.
And their kind of energy and resilience levels through that.
Just beware, the customer service for this company is shocking. Great product, shocking customer service. Just putting it out there.
Oh, that's such a shame, because this is just when you need good customer service, when you're trying to navigate this unknown territory. But yes, thank you so much, Lauren. It's been really, really useful to hear all of this information. And if anybody out there is watching or listening, if you're listening to the podcast and would like to get in touch with Lauren, I highly recommend it. Obviously, she has an awful lot of great wisdom to share that will be really helpful. So thank you all very much for tuning in. If you're watching the replay, don't forget to stick in a #replay. If you've got any questions, pop them below or message me, and I'll make sure that they get passed on to Lauren, and I'm sure she'll be happy to answer for you. Thank you very much again. Bye-bye for now. See you again soon.